Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. I got to turn off the other YouTube. This is the Daily Medicine Transmission for June 2nd, 2021. It is Wednesday. Yes, it is Wednesday, June 2nd. And I'm so happy to be here. Welcome back to my subscribers, my supporters. Thank you so much for being here. You truly are the lifeblood of this channel and this work and this content. So I just am so grateful that you are here. And if you're new here, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And as always, whenever you interact with content by independent content creators like myself, you actually do support their work and their content by signaling to the AI to spread this content to a wider audience. So thank you for subscribing, for liking the video, for commenting, for sharing the information. It all really does support the channel and the work. So third quarter moon, third quarter sun, and squaring the moon. Today, it actually happened at 3:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, right after midnight on the West Coast. And of course, in between the two coasts of the United States, somewhere in the realm of our dreamland, we had the first quarter, or third quarter moon squaring the sun. So our moon is in Pisces still all day today. We'll be moving into Aries tomorrow. So we really are in a position right now to very much trust this process within us that is absolutely coming to a close, right? And this is why today is, it's so important that we are willing to and able to replace our worry and our concern with all of the material aspects of our lives, which seems really hard to do when what is at stake is very personal to us, has an impact on all of our lives in the micro and the macro. It's really inseparable. So whatever's going on in your personal life, is in some way reflecting back to each of us what is going on a collective macro level as well. And it's very difficult. I mean, it's great to say these things, but to actually put them into practice is where the real challenge is. And I would really encourage people to do whatever it takes to actually implement some sort of practice that allows you and allows all of us to trust what is unfolding. And a moon in Pisces is a great time to actually do that, especially as now we are officially moving into the last quarter of this lunar cycle that had a full moon lunar eclipse, that had Mercury retrograde, had Saturn going retrograde as well. And if let's take a walk back here to the new moon that is the essence of this cycle we are still in, because we still have another week to go until this solar eclipse. So we're finishing up this lunar cycle, a white dove flying over troubled waters, right? We set the intention from the beginning that within us, we will allow the growth and the ultimate illumination of this aspect of ourselves that really does trust the natural process unfolding. And now we're in a time and in a moment where we're being really challenged to do this. And like I said, a moon in Pisces seems like the best time to do this, because emotionally, intuitively, and very personally, we are, engaging with the end of a cycle with Pisces. And so it makes it a lot easier to just surrender ourselves to the collective process. Does that mean we're complacent? No. Does that mean we're apathetic? No, not necessarily. This is really about how we each individually engage this energy. But it is important that we know where we stand, where our boundaries are, where our core of who we are really lies. And Venus is going to come into Cancer today, and this is a point of decision. 0 degrees Cancer is the raising of a new flag, and it's where, in fact, we are the most stabilized. We make that decision within uh, everything that we have learned, all the empirical data that comes through with Gemini. And of course, this is not over by any stretch. We have Mercury in retrograde, still in the same degree right now that it stationed retrograde at. And so we are still working with this energy of pruning and cutting back what is extraneous and unnecessary when it comes to empirical data, when it comes to communication, when it comes to all of the data that we have access to. And this also goes in terms of an outward expression back to a more of a listening and observing as well. This retrograde time on its own represents a lot of these things, and to have it at the degree of Gemini, the Sabian symbol representing this pruning process, it's really strong that we are being asked to cut back on things that are extraneous. Really observe and take the time to go back over all of the information that we have accumulated over I'd say the last year, but really we're looking at over throughout the course of this cycle where this new eclipse season has come about. This is so there's no shortage of opportunity to go back over this old territory, to go into the review stage with Mercury retrograde. But Venus is when she met Mercury and then Mercury stationed retrograde, it was kind of like a kiss, right? Of just like, okay, let me know here where we can cut back, and then what I'm going to utilize in my very material reality to weave together that container of security, of safety, of protection for what are, the space of our emotional vulnerability. Cancer is the home and family, right? It is the womb of the mother. It is that containment system that holds us so that we can develop fully our character and actually stabilize ourselves enough to touch the core of who we are, which is permanent, which is vast, which is dark, right? We get into the soil that the root system is in, and we allow ourselves to stabilize in that darkness, in that space that allows for growth. So there is Venus here coming into Cancer today. There's going to be a very distinct decision of where we are going to align ourselves, what decision we're going to make about where we align ourselves, where we feel stable, where we feel secure, and where we want to put our energy in terms of our family, our home, our ancestral traditions, the place where we feel the most aligned, where we belong, and where our loyalty lies. And Venus is all about our relationships and our material reality. What and who has value to us in a very material way. And that's not to say that people don't have intrinsic value. That's actually the complete opposite of that. Everything has intrinsic value because it exists. In this universe, it has intrinsic value because it was created and it exists. Even when we don't like what the value that it holds, it still holds a value somewhere. So Venus is we're going to feel this, and it's going to be very palpable of where our allegiances really lie, and in terms of what we are sensitive to, and like I said, who and what we value. And Venus coming into Cancer, the first decan, that first 10 degrees of Cancer, what is it? It's the Two of Cups. Love. You can't actually experience love in a physical dimension without separation and differentiation. And this gives us the opportunity. Now, it's going to take a lot here for us individually and energetically to really balance and anchor ourselves in this lack of knowing in order to really identify where we belong, who has value to us, and what we want to give our energy to. because on the outside here with this, squares mean change, right? There's no resolving a square. You just lean into it. It's uncomfortable and it forces a shift in trajectory or a shift in perspective. So with the moon, the moon, the third quarter moon squaring a Gemini sun, the moon in Pisces, we are really wanting to express ourselves through a complete release of our past, right? That's part of the Gemini archetype in terms of keeping that balance, is that we have to let go of all of the aspects that have built us up so far in order to engage in a whole new zone, right? And this is what the North Node is really representing in this current moment until it eventually shifts out of this degree. So we are looking at what it is, we are looking at and addressing here what does need to go. And if it has not been acknowledged already, this third quarter moon is making it really clear, and causing that crisis of consciousness within us, because for as much as we recognize we are letting go of the past, we're letting go of our own past, we're letting go of the aspects that have built up and created who we are so far, we do have to acknowledge on some level the initiatory process that this sets up for us, and that it is in fact an initiation. And Gemini is really good at engaging with this energy. This is the power of Gemini. This is the power of the Orion starseed frequency and resonance, right? The ability to engage with this dialectic without the emotional body being fully engaged or involved. But with the moon in Pisces, that's impossible, right? You are, in fact, everything else, and it very emotionally and feeling based and intuitively, we're feeling it all. So this square is really making it difficult to separate emotionally from the impact of letting go of our past. And where we can really learn the most in this moment, in this situation, is to trust that this process is in fact initiating us into where we want to be and what we've aligned ourselves with. When you come into Pisces in the 12th house, it is the house of endings, and it is the sign of the collective karma and the collective unconscious and everything that has transpired over the course of the cycle. But, it also lets us know that everything that is being pulled away, everything that is that we are surrendering ourselves to, there's that Neptune and Pisces energy that has recently shifted now to show us what we are releasing ourselves into, right? The dharma of our own personal nature and how that is so beautifully interconnected with the whole and the collective, for better or for worse, right? It's all part of the beautiful mosaic that Pisces represents, the ocean of consciousness. It's inseparable, right? The whole forest for the trees thing is very much active in Pisces, in all of these mutable signs, actually. But we are being primed to simultaneously release a lot and then trust in what that actually means, because we don't have all of the answers right now. And if we did have all of and I've talked about this before, if we did have all of the answers, we may not actually go through the process that is leading to our evolution and our spiritual development and growth and evolution, our soul's evolution, right? Which is the nodal axis of the moon. If we knew all of the information, we may not actually go through with the things that we need to go through in order to grow. And so this is where trust is really essential, and where this third quarter moon squaring the sun today, and also the North Node, and squaring both nodes actually today. That's already happened. That happened right before the moon was in square to the sun overnight. And so there is, it's very difficult to trust and to surrender ourselves to this collective process of the cycle coming to an end, everything diffusing back into one collective experience in order to come back into the renewal of the new cycle, which is what's going to be really clear to us when the moon comes into Aries tomorrow. And we also have the sun is going to trine Saturn tomorrow, and retrograde Saturn as well. And we're going to be reintroduced in some ways, or come back around to this idea of telepathy and the direct communication without any of the social overlay, any of our physical material world being in the way, direct. And this has come up a couple of times now in other people's transmissions and their channelings, that it is the isolation that we have all experienced over the course of the last year that has actually made our telepathy a lot stronger. And this is part of our evolution of the evolution of humanity, and our evolution as humans has gotten this isolation period, which is in fact what Saturn and especially Pluto are going back over right now, is this entire year. And we are going back over it right now with Saturn and Pluto. And so the sun trine to Saturn tomorrow is again going to bring this right to the surface, this ability to directly communicate, to bridge the gap of all of these other social and physical barriers to direct knowing and communication with the sun. So this is something we'll talk about tomorrow, because also Venus is going to trine Jupiter now that Venus will be in Cancer, and that will be in some ways our ability to really transcend the direct experience of all of what is unfolding. And again, that will reinforce the trust that I feel like is being asked of us right now. But let's go into the chart for today and kind of get an idea here of what we're working with when it comes to, in fact, our ability to trust rather than to worry, and what is going on for us today. So I hope everybody is doing well, taking very good care of themselves. It's, we're still in this eclipse portal, and Mercury retrograde is still very active and will be until after the solstice. So just keep those things in mind. The other thing I want to point out here, just to give us a sense of what to expect, is we are just days away from this Mars opposition to Pluto retrograde. So that's something that's going to come up. And I talked about this on the daily or the weeklies and the full monthly report, and we will come back and engage with this, this dynamic again, because it's so powerful. And you have to remember that Mars and Pluto both are co-rulers of Scorpio. And we're going to see today's intuitive message coming through, really holding that Scorpio resonance, and which really does represent the changeover, right? The transformational energy requires the letting go and the destruction of something. So, and the fact that there's a lot of resistance to this right now, and there has been for a long time, but it's really building and building. So when Mars and Pluto come into this opposition, both co-rulers of Scorpio, both in this Cancer Capricorn axis, both very, very close to where Pluto is in its Pluto return in the United States. Oh boy, the storm will be coming. And thankfully we have Mars in Cancer able to really protect what is the most valuable while the storm rages through our lives. It's definitely coming, which will be on the 5th. And so we'll talk more about that. For now, let's talk about today, right? Let's backtrack here to this current moment. And we are looking at a moon in Pisces, as you see right here. So we talked about the square to the sun already. We talked about the square to the nodes. And I will say that square to the nodes highlighted very, very specifically that narrow path that we talked about yesterday. It is absolutely narrow. And Saturn is making it very real, right? It's making it very formed. It's crystallizing it as the retrograde continues. That tunnel that allows us to bypass what would be quote unquote natural evolution, because humans are able to actually make conscious choice about their decisions. This allows us to actually direct the course of our own evolution. That tunnel is constricting now with Saturn retrograde and the moon in Pisces in a square to the nodes, which are in fact pulling us in the direction of this newly open lands and the opportunity of a pioneer. This square here is saying that there is a very narrow path along this way, and we can't, if we get lost in the width of the whole thing, that pathway, we get lost, we get pulled off track, we get distracted. And that moon in Pisces, it's a very narrow path, my friends. It's very narrow, and it's within us, right? Especially with the moon in Pisces, it's definitely within us. Even if we're feeling it outside of us and everything else, we have to, again, come back in, consolidate to a certain extent, and know what that pathway is within us, which is just our own gut, right? Our own gut. There is so much information to be had, and this is why this Mercury retrograde is, it cannot be overstated how important this Gemini Mercury retrograde is right now in order to go back over this old territory in terms of information and transmissions and data, right? And the communication, and really go back over it and cut away what is extraneous, because that shit has been holding us back, right? It has been holding us back, and we are starting to realize how much it's been holding us back from actually just being engaged in reality and making an impact in the world around us. Now, not everybody is going to be out on the front line in the material world fighting, right? Or standing up. But we all have our means to do this, and we all are being called to the table to do this in certain ways. Some people are fighting right now. Other people are on, I don't want to call it on standby, but there is other work that needs to be done under the surface in the energetic realm that is preparing for the birth of the new world, right? Everybody's got their role to play. And regardless of what it is, you have to find that narrow pathway that you are traveling for your own transcendence in order to really understand where it is we're all headed. Because again, there's a lot here that we can get pulled off course with. So that square between the moon and the nodes overnight was a very direct. And so it might have come through your dreams, like moon in Pisces, you're connecting to all kinds of aspects within the collective unconscious. So again, it might not be something directly related to you in that moment, but it does have a way to be applied to your personal life. But ultimately, we're all kind of going through this. So we have the square to the nodes. We had the square to the sun. Again, we want to, and we are expressing ourselves through this, in that moment of the liquidation of our past, right? We can't move into new territory with our ghosts of our previous selves hanging on. It's like shedding the skin of a reptile, right? We have to let the whole thing go. The problem I'm finding that most, the majority, right, the collective issue here is that we don't want to let go until we know what's coming next. And we're just not going to know, right? Some things have to be left unknown. Again, we just went over it, and I've gone over it several times. And all you have to do is watch one of the, the very last act of the entire end game, story to know that if you knew the ending and what had to be surrendered, we may not have gone through with it. And this is important to understand. So what else is happening today? Well, something really significant is that the sun now at 12 to 13 degrees of Gemini is in a sextile to Chiron in Aries. So somebody had brought up a couple days ago that, especially with the astrology report, that it gets really heady when you start talking technical. And I understand that. So I'm going to do my best to explain these aspects as we go along. And I try to do that anyway. So, but I will keep doing it so that people understand what these angles actually represent. So the sextile, 60-degree angle. It usually comes, between a sign. There's a sign in between the two sextile aspects, or the sextile position. So the sun in Gemini, Chiron in Aries. It's fire and air. So you know that a sextile is going to have the same quality on the spectrum of duality. It's either going to be the masculine or the feminine. So any sextile is going to be between an air sign and a fire sign, or a water sign and a earth sign. So you know right there that you're working with the same quality of energy on the masculine end. So the sun is in a sextile to Chiron. So we're looking at Gemini and Aries in a sextile. You can invest that energy from one to the other to gain the most out of it. It is two opposing forces, seemingly, overlaid on top of each other. So you get what? A Star of David, right? So you have one triangle, right? And then you have the other that's inverted, right? And then they're placed on one on top of the other, and then you have a sextile, which it's a harmonious angle. They are familiar with each other. They're on the same end of the spectrum in terms of masculine and feminine polarity, but they are in different signs. And so you can invest your energy from one into the other to get the most out of it. It's harmonious, but it requires our participation in order to get the harmony out of it, as opposed to a trine, which are these triangles. You see here, 120-degree angle. This is where the sun and Saturn are going to be exact tomorrow. A trine is it is the corner, right? It's the angle of the triangle. And so it's a very stable, secure angle. In fact, you don't really need to you don't get a lot of learning out of these trines, because there's not any tension or challenge here, like a square and opposition, but there's nothing to do here. These trines are in the same sign, and they link up at the same degree, except in different signs, but still the air sign, right? And so you don't have to do anything, but you don't really learn much either. So they are harmonious connections. So, but you learn the most from the squares and the oppositions, which is also where the difficulties come in, and people, it becomes a challenge. You have to be one of these people that really values your challenges and the tension in your life so that you can learn something. So anyway, let's go back to right now. So the sun is in a sextile to Chiron. So Aries and Gemini. Investing the air into the fire, right? What happens when air is invested into fire? It flames, right? It flames. If you add oxygen, or you add even just air to a fire, it gets bigger. So we know that where the sun is in a sextile to Chiron, we know that we can apply this energy, this Gemini energy where the sun is. And what's the sun? It's the expression of who we are. We can apply this to where Chiron is in Aries, but it will, in fact, it'll build the flame. It'll build the flame. And where Chiron is right now is an incredibly difficult position. 13 degrees Aries is an unexploded bomb. It is the idea that in Aries, because there's so much cardinal fire, right, directional fire to actualize ourselves, that sometimes what we find is that we want to do this before it's time. And this is where Chiron is really challenging us right now, because it's bringing up so much wounding. It's bringing up all this vulnerability. It's bringing up the victim-savior dichotomy. And we want something to happen. And we will try to make it happen, despite the fact that it's actually it's not time to happen. It's very frustrating, and it's very much like adolescent frustration. And it's an unexploded bomb at a protest, right? Ooh, that's even more interesting. So we know with this sextile here that the sun is going to harmoniously connect to Chiron in a way that we can invest that energy into Chiron. Now, is that necessarily a good thing? What is 13 degrees Gemini? Well, maybe we should look at that. A famous pianist giving a concert performance. Now remember, Gemini is about individual skill. This is where we learn our skill set. Either it's reading, it's writing, it's arithmetic, right? Grammar school, rote repetition, practice. This is where the Orion resonance makes a lot of sense in terms of competition, because it's in this this dualistic nature that there's something to work towards that influences us and motivates us to practice. And so this degree of Gemini is this person, a famous pianist, somebody that has dedicated their time and energy to perfecting a skill, giving a performance. And this is when we each fulfill some aspect here of a social function, we end up being inspiration for other people to do so. We're not doing it for them. We're not we're not creating something or giving this performance for the accolades, for the emotional reward. That's in Cancer. This is strictly just showcasing what we've learned and our technical skill and the fact that we've mastered it to a certain extent. And that becomes the motivation, right? That becomes the inspiration for other people to do the same. Oh, wow. So when we engage in this and we express ourselves through this, it is going to fan the flames. Oh my gosh, it's going to fan the flames of Aries, and it's going to fan the flames of this adolescent frustration that is going to trigger a lot of people. And this could be an opportunity here to actually do some healing work on ourselves if we see this opportunity, right? If we allow ourselves and we are really fulfilling our social function through the performance of all of the technical skill, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is. And this is important to know where Gemini is in your chart. So 13 degrees Gemini, it's in my 4th house, right? A home and family, where I am drawing my personal power from, or anybody's in their 4th house, where I'm stabilized as an individual human being in an emotional way. If you are giving this performance, right? Your individual fulfillment and performing it for others in order to motivate and inspire people to do the same. It is going to trigger people. And I can already see this happening in certain circles, and it's just going to become exact today. And it is going to make it really obvious that, again, we need to trust this process within ourselves as much as it is really triggering the fact that we feel like we have to do something, right? And we are doing something. We are performing our individual social function of our skill set, whatever that is, within whatever realm you find this in. And in some ways, this is if you're not dealing with Chiron consciously, then yeah, that's going to, trigger this wounding even more, and you're going to feel more frustrated and you're going to want to explode even more. But what it can do, if we see it in the right way, if we see it in a way that's helpful, and we want to heal, then we can utilize this skill, whatever it is, in Gemini. And of course, we're still talking about the realm of the mind, because it is our mind and our nervous system that is what allows us to practice these skills, whatever our skill set is, our technical skill. We can really apply this today to let the flame flare a little bit so we can see where our frustration is, where we're trying to, maintain some sort of control, because our ego consciousness is desperately wanting something to be, activated, and it's just not time, right? It's just not time. We have to let things, fulfill naturally. And, I really didn't have a sense as strongly as I do right now before actually channeling this. And this is going to be an incredibly potent transit today. So what else is coming? Like I said, Venus is coming into Cancer. So we have this, and this is happening right now, right? So what else is happening? Venus is now literally in Cancer right now, 0 degrees. So while that's happening in this moment, it actually just passed not that long ago. See, 12:14, 12:09. Venus has now moved into 0 degrees Cancer, right? The raising of a new flag, the point of no return. We have, when the roots grow in a plant, when they finally actually start, because they don't grow right away, the first thing that happens is the seed splits apart and the germination happens. But that first part of germination is the seedling really pushing up through the surface of the soil and having those two first little leaves, right? Then once that happens, then the roots start growing down. And that is the 0 degrees Cancer moment. You've made a decision of where these roots are going to stabilize you in the world around you. And of course, when we're born, we don't choose in our physical incarnation where to be. That's something that comes that comes before we incarnate, right? And especially if you're looking at the chart in an evolutionary astrology perspective, then we absolutely chose all of these aspects: our birth time, location, the date, our the family container that we are born into in a physical way. We choose all of these things in order for our soul to grow and evolve, because that's what this is really about. This whole thing is about this, not just what's on the surface. Although that would be really satisfying. And that's where Chiron is really important right now. And keep in mind that Chiron moves very slowly, has a 50-year orbit. So it moves through degrees very slowly, just like the outer planets. So it holds the resonance of this degree for a long time and very strongly. So keep in mind that this unexploded bomb at a protest that Chiron is sitting on right now, we're going to be feeling this for a couple weeks, okay? And so this sun in the sextile is a moment here to really get a handle on it, right? Not let it trigger us unconsciously, because it can. I mean, that's part of our growth process as well, is being aware. We can't always just like stop it, but if we're aware of it, then we learn so much from the situation. And that goes both ways. We can apply this Chiron and Aries sextile to the virtuoso aspect of the sun in Gemini. We can apply them equally to each other's harmonization and potential. So Venus moves into Cancer. We become very stabilized in our relationships, our projects, the material world, and what feels good to us, what is harmonious to us, what has value to us. The goddess of love attracts to her what it is that she wants and desires and feels good to her. And there's no shame in that. It's not meant to be shameful. Taurus is about natural fulfillment. It is about the natural world and the rhythm and the cycle. And so Venus just pulls it to her, right? She attracts it to her. Venus is the goddess of love because she attracts to her what it is that is harmonious and feels good to her. So we make a decision here based on how we feel in our bodies. Ooh, that came up really strong yesterday too. And Lee Harris's transmission for the energy update for June really amplified this. He said it directly, right? We're going to start feeling it in our body. And specifically, we are going to start feeling in our body who we want to protect, where we belong, where our loyalties lie in our immediate, intimate relationships, and those bonds that are going to hold all of us. Now, this stretches from home and family to the land of origin, to tribal and regional identity, to national identity and patriotism, all of that Cancer energy, and the womb, right? The womb and the mother. So, and to have Venus here now in Cancer is so beautiful, and it's going to give us so much opportunity to utilize our actual intuition and our gut feeling to know where it is we belong and who we want to be with, basically, and who has value to us in terms of our emotional ties to each other. This is really exciting and also really aggravating so much. So those, those are the two big aspects today. Now the moon is moving through Pisces. And so it was also in a sextile. Let's talk again, sextiles. So again, there's another example of a water and earth sextile between the moon in Pisces and Uranus in Taurus. So again, there's that mutually beneficial relationship that requires an investment on our part. And so this sextile here, Uranus has been really challenging us, and I said like every single day now, in this degree, and has been traveling with Chiron in this semi-sextile, right? Because they're only 30 degrees apart. So they're harmonious connection between signs, Aries and Taurus, but they're very subtle. We don't have it's not obvious to us what their connection is. It's a 30-degree angle. So it's semi-sextile. It's harmonious, but it's not fully baked yet, right? We can't get the full investment because it hasn't acquired all of its interest yet or whatever. You can use whatever references you want to make sense of it. But what I will say is that Pisces in a sextile to Uranus, Uranus has been really challenging us with how much baggage we're going to hold as we go through this collective awakening process that Uranus represents, right? The collective third eye. Uranus is the fool in some ways. Uranus is Prometheus, right? Uranus is turning everything on its head in order to trigger a transformation into a higher realm of consciousness. Uranus as a planet is tipped on its side, so it rotates on its axis like this, right? Even though it's still their poles are still technically north-south, and who knows how that happened. And maybe it got knocked over by an asteroid or something, or whatever, some other celestial body. Who knows? The point is that Uranus, this pathway of awakening, right, that you're an Aquarian energy that it represents, which is outside of the realm of space and time, has been really challenging us on terms of the baggage of what we want to acquire, right? There is ambition and social desire in Taurus. There's no getting around it. It's part of being in material form, right? Now, what Uranus is doing is disrupting all of that constantly to get us to wake up collectively to this is the cost of the ambition to acquire these material desires, whatever it is. And on the 14th, which is right after the solar eclipse, we're going to have the next Saturn-Uranus square. At this time, Saturn is going to be retrograde. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the astrology report, but it's just to give you an idea that this is going to be very strongly aspected, not to mention that asteroid Ceres, the goddess of the grain, of agriculture, of what, the seasonal cycles of our agriculture and nourishment, also going to meet Uranus. Oof. It's just gonna keep getting more disruptive, and especially in a material resources, which is what Taurus ultimately represents. So the moon here in a sextile to Uranus is letting us all plug into, in a way, when we really let go and submerge ourselves into the collective unconscious and into the past, into the future, into the Akash itself, we can find examples from the past, for instance, or in different time periods that allow us to, like I said, an example of how to move forward, an example of how to present ourselves, an example of how to handle the baggage, and how to let go of it, how to cut it loose. That seems to be the most relevant imagery that's coming up, is the being able to cut it loose. And so, but we have to apply that to where Uranus is, and vice versa, right? Uranus is challenging us on terms of what we want to acquire in the baggage. Can we take it with us? Well, the moon in Pisces is just like, here, look at these examples from the past, your own past, your past lives, the starseed aspects. This is by the way, 13 degrees of Pisces, which is where, let's go back just a minute here. 12 to 13 degrees Pisces is actually a starseed marking for Sirius, right? And so we can we can also apply that nature to cutting away, or using that example in the past, cutting away of what is unnecessary in order for us to truly submerge into the collective experience and surrender ourselves. And this just, again, this has a lot to do as well with where we're at, what we're surrendering to, right? This is important to be very aware of. And a lot of people have no idea, right? The collective on the planet is waking up every day, but that still is not everybody. And so we are working with this dual nature of, being awake and aware, and then also completely unconscious and giving ourselves away to somebody else's, cycle that is about to renew. So again, we can allow ourselves to submerge into this collective experience, into the Akash, and utilize an example of a transcendental and spiritual a nature that will allow us to cut away or to see how acquiring or wanting to acquire material resources on some level, it's not wrong. It's just that we're working with the energy of awakening and transformation that Uranus represents, and it triggers it by turning things on its head, just like the Fool is able to do. And so we have to be aware of that. So we can apply that as well, right? We can apply that time in the nebulous. Oh man, that came up so strong. The nebulous. And I'm going to show you in the reading too, the nebula that where stars are born, right? Where there is a concentration of space dust and gas, which is where stars are born and planets are born. And just like Pisces, it's all this formless collection of experiences and karma and matter that eventually comes and consolidates back into a form. We'll deal with that tomorrow when we come into Aries with the moon. But for now, there is something to be said and gained by this nebulous kind of dissolving within ourselves into the Akash. Oh man. Wow. So what else did we got today? So we talked about that. The moon is opposite Vesta, right? And Vesta is in Virgo. Again, these are both they're opposite each other, but they are both actually Syrian starseed markings. So again, there are aspects that are in opposition to each other, but we can learn from this tension, find the fulcrum between, again, finding a way to use our intelligence and mental subtlety to protect ourselves, right? The moon in Pisces, we go back to this idea of protection for ourselves, our intelligence, right? And Jupiter, being Jupiter, right? If you're in his favor, he's going to protect you. And if he's not, he's going to be like, hey, the squirrel's over there, I'm going to totally throw you under the bus. And that's what Jupiter does, because it's all about what is being in Jupiter's favor, right? What is actually the best for the collective and the collective values that Jupiter defends. So it just depends, doesn't it? So Vesta in Virgo, right? Supporting our conditioning and our self-discipline and our development as a service to others individual. So this is going to test us as well, because there is, again, are we going to draw in from our root power, right? Very Virgo type of thing, right? The roots are what pulls the nutrients up from the soil during that time. Or at the same time, the moon is pulling us into kind of wrapping ourselves in our intelligence in order to protect ourselves. And with Mercury in a retrograde in terms of intelligence, and the sun in Gemini, the North Node in Gemini, all of that stuff. It seems to me that we're going to have to find the balance point. We can't just go one or the other. We can't just hide. We can't just hide within the fog machine. We could, but Vesta is really being like, you can't do that. That is a transient experience. And if you really want to achieve the seed, if the seed of the next cycle really has any chance, we have to dig into our root power. And that's what Vesta is supporting us with. And it's a lot easier to just, blend into the background or blend into this nebulous area until the storm passes. And that's not going to be good enough as far as, it's there, it's important, but it's not going to be good enough. I'm telling you, we have to really get into our root power if we want to succeed. And this is where Vesta has been supporting us this whole time. So then, I've been thinking about Juno a lot. Asteroid Juno, and she is the wife of Zeus or Jupiter. She represents our contractual obligations to each other for good or for bad. And betrayal is a part of this archetype, and our loyalty is a part of this archetype, and what our responsibility is to those we are actually in relationship with, and whatever that relationship is. And the fact that Juno is retrograde has really been sticking on me for a while, and I feel like now we've really been very deeply considering and going over and reviewing, right? That retrograde, really reviewing our loyalties, our responsibilities to each other, who we're responsible to, where are our relationships in our lives, and who are responsible, and what's the quality of that commitment, and maybe even addressing and reviewing even the quality of that commitment, and if we even are actually bound by any commitment. So that has been really strong, and especially because it's in Sagittarius. So the moon is going to square Juno and 18 degrees Sagittarius. So Juno is up here, the moon will be over here, and this square, the thing about Sagittarius, for all of the wonderful, and believe me, I have all this such heavy Sag in my chart, and it's so much, for all of the benefits and the optimism and the big picture and the real truth that the Sagittarian archetype represents, right? The archer always pointing to the sky, right? The Jupiter, the overarching, expanding big picture, the higher mind is what Sagittarius really is able to access. For all of that energy, it also does provide a means of the culture, and the religious dogma does shield us in some ways from direct exposure, which is Pisces, right? Direct connection to source, and Aquarius too. Aquarius is that direct connection, but it's not an experience of it as much as the utilization of the feeling in order to evolve, to move into the future for very humanitarian reasons. Pisces is the direct experience of it. And so this square today, again, where is our responsibility to each other? Is there a responsibility to shield people from their own truth, right? Is there? I think we're really reviewing this. But what I will say is the moon in a square to this position is really going to challenge that even more, because the moon is going to be like, we're just all going to come together under one tent. It's like a circus, right? And the ringleader, or if you go into a revival tent, the evangelical preacher, or just making a really, able to bring all these elements together in a very cohesive way of experience, right? Where the audience and the initiator are all in it together, right? That's where the moon is in this square to Juno. And we are really, is there a responsibility? Do we have a responsibility? Does somebody else have a responsibility to shield us from our own truth? And the moon in Pisces in this square today is really going to challenge this, because we're going to be like, look at all the things that we can actually do when we pull it all together, right? When we're able to pull it all together into one performance, and there is a ringleader here that is able to do this seamlessly. Pisces time of year, a lot of generals and admirals are born as Pisces suns. So that gives you an idea of the full commitment and almost a transubstantiation, but a full commitment of the self to the collective experience that these leaders represent. And it's the same thing in this this square here. There's some people that feel that we are, there it is. There are people who feel that we are not capable as human beings to have access to the truth, have access to our own inner, to illumination, especially from the sun, right? That they need to shield us from that. And in fact, that we are not worthy of it. And the moon in Pisces is going to show how each of us individually are our own ringleader, and that we are able to bring all of these elements together within our own reality and create something that we can all be inspired by. Man, I've been really sitting on that Juno retrograde for a long time, because now it's crossing all of my Sag. And it is certainly challenging a lot for me in terms of my responsibility and my commitment and my social commitments and all of that stuff. And so it's very interesting, but I do feel like that square with the moon today, in Pisces is going to, it's going to be like, oh, wait a minute. You know what? I have everything within me to access these spaces, and I can access them in me. I have the tech in me. Nobody else needs to actually mitigate this process for me as much as they think that's their responsibility. And Juno, she is not happy with Zeus a lot of the time. So by hook or by crook, they are still in relationship with each other, but she's done, she often does things out of jealousy or out of a sense of retribution or, because she is not always in agreement with what Jupiter or Zeus ends up doing, because Zeus is endlessly expanding. That's why he's always like, got all these illegitimate children, right? He's always expanding. There's never a barrier for Zeus. And Juno is the barrier in the commitment to the relationship. And so sometimes she creates scenarios that are trying to block or trying to put Zeus into a framework that is about his responsibility, which is really hard. So this square is really interesting, and Juno in retrograde in Sagittarius is going to continue. And so it's something to consider as we move forward and just through time in general, how that particular dynamic is unfolding. So that's something that we can keep having a conversation about. But ultimately, that's really the last transit I want to talk about for today. So let's look at the reading and get a sense of what is going on in terms of the intuitive messages and how they are supporting what is a very technical and time clock based reality here. These are fixed points in time that we do not change. It is all about our relationship to these aspects and these astrological fixed points and astronomical fixed points that really make the difference in our own lives and determine the quality of the unfoldment of our reality, which is really hard with Pluto involved in Capricorn, right? So let's move over here. I hope everybody is doing well. I know I keep saying that, but I actually mean it. Because these are hard times. And I'm right there with you. I have some serious issues in my personal life and in my immediate family that are requiring my attention, that are very distressing. And so we all have to take this one moment at a time. So here is our reading. As you can see here, everything along this axis of our horizon of our consciousness, our cause and effect linear material relationship here outside of us, quote unquote, is all reversed. 5 of discs, the death card, and then the lovers, the Gemini card. So it's really a lot about where we're going to find ourselves energetically with this death energy at the heart of the matter today. There's really no stopping what is coming. This reversed Gemini or reverse lovers does feel like the Mercury retrograde energy, that it will move throughout its cycle, right? And as our linear kind of effect, we have our causal factor. We have what's going on energetically at the heart of the moment here, which is also the axis of our outer world and our inner world. And then we have the inevitable effect or conclusion to all of these things. And it's not necessarily a splitting apart, but I think that people really are going to have a hard time with the review, the Mercury retrograde, seemingly splitting apart, seemingly disseminating ourselves, not really openly in love with that which is mirrored to us. And that's going to be really difficult, especially with death right at the center here. So let's start here. 5 of discs. When it is reversed, you see here actually that the pentagram is more of a pentacle, right? Where we have the aspect here that is meant to be rooting us down into Taurus, right? Because the 5 of discs is Mercury in Taurus. It's the worry about our material reality. Now, there could be something here that actually stimulates this, but when it's reversed like this, it also suggests that, it's really just a worry about it and not something that's based in an actual experience. It also, in and of itself, the 5 of discs, nobody likes this. The 5 of pentacles, worry, right? It is a breaking up of our material stability, right? There's a material crisis, and that could be anything from material resources, our home, an injury, an illness, anything in the material nuts and bolts reality is the discs. And so this is a material crisis in some way, and anything that disturbs that security is what this represents. And something to keep in mind here is that the most fertile ground comes from the ashes. If you ever wonder why the topsoil in the Pacific Northwest is so damn amazing and why there's so much growth there, it's because of volcanic activity and the volcanic ash that fertilizes the soil over time. And so that's something to keep in mind just in general. But when it's reversed like this, there's a lot of fear of loss. There's a lot of potential destruction that is already happening. There is a lot of unpredictable changes. This is all the causal factor coming into the moment. It also could represent our worry about things within ourselves, right? Our own material security that is within us. And the unpredictable changes that come and not really aligning with the material crisis. It's already difficult in and of itself, but when it's reversed, there's so much resistance here, and this whole horizontal axis is all there's so much resistance. And at the same time, if we can turn that resistance turn the lens into our own self, this is one way we can look at this whole experience. Now, if we don't do that, then that could be just resistance across the board. So something here has us very worried, and it may have already transpired, but it's definitely the causal factor, right, of this material crisis, and not really being able yet to see the fertile ground that the destruction is going to create. This is where the trust has to come in. Absolutely. And we're going to see this littered throughout this entire reading. So in the heart of the moment is the death card. Number 13, we have Scorpio. What rules Scorpio? Well, Pluto does, doesn't it? And death is really the archetype of transformation and metamorphosis, right? And so, again, resistance. Now, this could be a death within ourselves, right? A death of our own nature. And with so much of this Gemini energy on the surface with the sun and the North Node and Mercury retrograde, we are acknowledging that we have to let go of one side in order to balance out the other side. We even have the 2 of Scrolls here as this, energetic root here. But, transformation is preceded by destruction. And it's always this way. This is the darkness of the Scorpio archetype and the 8th house, is there's no getting around this. And this is why it brings us to our dark night of the soul and the death of our ego, because we can't get away from this, right? But it does allow for inner wisdom. It does allow for the space for something new to grow. And it is signaling that something does have to go. And again, it's reversed. And so we're already worrying about it. It's already it's already here that we're worried about. And then we face this moment that it's so, and remember, Scorpio is opposite of Taurus. So Taurus is the natural world. Scorpio is it's the dark realization and the truth that we have to let it go. That's part of the natural cycle and how that feels, right? Scorpio is water, depth, fixed water. It's the depth of all of that feeling. It's absolutely, you know what this looks like to me? This looks like fascia, right? It's all connected. And you do see here that there is a bird here that has got its wings spread that's also connected to all of this. And you can see that there are, these are like phantoms or ghosts or whatever. And they're all in these little pods here or these circles, and they're being let go of and released back to wherever. And it's coming from this process. So there is a lot of, there's a lot of resistance to this. We're already worried about it, and it's already here in our hearts, this death, this need to let something go, that is going to be, it's so painful. And I can feel it stirring right now, like collectively, how painful it is. And I know this also directly connects to my own life right now. So it's a little extra sensitive, but what I will say is that there's a lot of resistance right now, and we're already worrying about it, and now it's like here, and we're just like, oh God. So let's see where we're at energetically, what we can work with. The Two of Scrolls, the two worlds. Well, the two world split is pretty obvious. That's becoming more and more and more obvious to every single day. It is manifesting in real time every day. And this is why this Mercury retrograde is so important, because we have to go back over all of this and really, really get that a fine-tooth comb, right? A magnifying glass, right? Really review, go back over our notes, make sure we haven't missed anything, cutting back what we don't need in terms of our mind and what's Gemini as well, our immediate reality, our immediate reality, what's right in front of us. Okay. Now we're rooted here, right? Energetically, we can root here, the two worlds. There's a conflict between our outer world and our inner world. Well, that's not really that hard to wrap our minds around. There's a polarity between our spiritual experience and our outer life, or the events of our outer life and our day-to-day life and our spiritual experience. We're really, I think, struggling too with this. And this is, but acknowledging this, rooting into this, knowing that this is part of the process is really important. And we have to replace our worry with trust that we can somehow bring these two aspects together eventually. But it's very palpable, like I said, and this bifurcation in terms of our physical life and our spiritual life is we're learning to bring it back together. But it's important that we replace our worry with trust and to integrate our eternal truth with our temporal reality. And this is really going to assist us. This is an important place to really stabilize ourselves right now and to draw our personal power. If you look at the chart, the vertical axis is our spinal cord and it's our power. And the nadir and the bottom of the chart is where we draw our personal power from. I'm not suggesting that we should be hyper focused on this dualistic nature. My sense of this is that acknowledging that there is a split and that we actually have the means to bring this together, it's just not there yet. We're not there yet. But replace the worry with trust, okay? Integrate the internal truth and our temporal reality, knowing that it's coming, right? Knowing that it's coming. And this, again, goes back to that sextile between the Sun in Gemini and Chiron in Aries, right? We have to work with our own skill set, really express ourselves through the showing of our own virtuosity in order to inspire others. And it'll either flame people's victim savior narrative, or it will show us where we need to heal these expectations of trying to get somewhere. Okay. These two worlds split. It's no joke. So where is the zenith of our destiny, right? Where we get our what's our contribution? Where do we get our institutional power, our public persona? And where is our conscious attention going? Where is this power being brought up and released to? Well, the King of Forces. So we had the Queen of Forces yesterday, if you remember, or if you didn't watch yesterday. So the Queen of Forces was here in our energetic root, in our nadir, so to speak. So we have the King of Forces. So court cards are usually us, representing us as actual people. Well, here's the nebula, first of all. So let's talk about that for a second. The nebula, right? The place where stars are born, the collection of gas and dust, and it has all these beautiful colors because it is the reflection of the colors, the reflection of the light on all of the dust and gas, and creates this cloud of color. And so there's a lot of powerful and positive energy that we can, that we can give off, that we can stand in, and we can stand in the balance of nature and the balance of creation, right? This nebula is where stars are created. This is an incredible process in our universe, and it is still happening in the Orion Nebula. It's still active. So we can really put our conscious awareness and consciously engage ourselves and align ourselves with this King of Forces, somebody who is trusting nature, is drawing their power from nature, is positive and peaceful and balanced, and brings together normally what would be conflicting. I was just talking about this to my partner yesterday. We often will watch videos of animals when we're feeling like we need to be uplifted, cute animals and relationships with humans. But what I've found is that human beings, when they engage with animals, they actually are, they allow for exactly what this card shows. What would normally in nature be adversarial, right? This wolf would be going after this rabbit for food. I found that human beings, when they have these really positive and balanced relationships with the animals in their lives, and granted they are domesticated to a certain, because they're pets or domesticated like farm animals, whatever. There's something about the relationship that humans have with animals that allows animals that normally would be adversarial in the wild to develop relationships with each other. This is very well showcased by this energy here, this card. And to keep this in mind, that we actually do have the capacity to hold this energy and to have an influence on the world around us just by being connected to it and creating something new, creating something beautiful. So for as much as there's worry and this looming death card that we're really pushing against, we do have this ability here to trust the process, know that differentiation allows for and separation allows for us to come back into unification for creation, and that we can be a source of balance and power and peace in the way that we express ourselves, this King of Forces. This is really important because where are we going? So the Lovers is the Gemini card, right? Number 6. So we have an ultimate expression of the sextile, right? Number 6, or a 60-degree angle is a sextile. So number 6 is that harmonious connection of the two triangles that are superimposed upon each other, but in opposite form, right? As we see here, the Lovers, the dark and the light, right? The light and the dark. They have their arms wrapped around each other, giving the other some aspect, a chalice and a spear. You have the egg wrapped around by the snake, the kundalini. You have these animals here on either side, and it's being consecrated by this large overarching figure, this cherub here with the Cupid's arrow type of thing. So it's the Lovers represents that commitment to some aspect that is seemingly opposite of ourselves, and now we have Venus and Mars both in Cancer right now. So that's something to keep in mind. The Sun and the Moon, they are in that square position. So when we have this Mercury retrograde that this can represent, right? The going back, making a commitment, to love, but maybe we need to go back. We're going to have to go back over this territory, and the worry and the looming death of what needs to go is really going to lead us in to either be control. We can look at Mercury retrograde like the traditional, like, don't do anything and everything's going to get fucked up and all this other stuff. I've never once resonated with any of those messages at all. And I have Mercury retrograde natal. So, it's really about this opportunity to go back over things. And we get, multiple times a year. But it's kind of inevitable. It's inevitable that, because of the Mercury retrograde, and it's inevitable because there is something that needs to be let go of, something that we're really worried about letting go of. And we don't know what it's actually going to be. We really don't know. We just know it's coming, and it's going to bring us to a place where we're going to feel like giving up, and there may be some displacement. And we really have to dig deep. And you'll see here, with the guidance cards how important this actually is. So let's actually move on to that, so that we can get out of the doom and gloom aspect and look at what kind of guidance and support is coming in. Number one, up in the air. So this has already come up several times, but this is reinforcing it. Up in the air. Feeling a strong urge to know, but there are elements that are just unknown. Right? They're just unknown. And there are people that are involved that they're undecided in their trajectory. There are events that have not come to pass yet, so we can't know what's coming because the preceding events haven't actually transpired. So, that's cause and effect is the nature of our universe, right? We can't really know the timeline until certain things have transpired to create the timeline, right? Things are up in the air right now. And we need to trust it. And if we push too hard, then we might push an outcome that we don't want. We might push away an outcome that we do want because we're pushing too hard, and we feel like we need to know so that we can feel safe and secure. Just like this 5 of discs, we're so worried about fear and loss that we are going to do anything we can to wrap our minds around some basis of control. And this is saying, it's up in the air. You have to trust this process. Let go of the urgency and allow time to unfold naturally, okay? And the Wolverine is letting you know you're a lot tougher than you think you are. And it's important that we dig deep for our internal resources in order to hold space for trust rather than trying to control the situation, because there's no controlling this. All we have control over is our own response to things. And we can see pretty clearly here that it's going to be a very massive undoing and destructive process that we are holding in our hearts right now in whatever way that it applies to our own personal lives. But this is saying, we are a lot tougher than we think and what we look, right? This is about the internal resources that we have to dig down into in order to really, maintain ourselves as we are having to trust this process unfold. So the Wolverines come up a lot. It really is showing me that we are a lot tougher than we think, and that it's important that we realize that, so that when we really face actual adversity, that we are prepared to hold it with grace and intelligence. Okay. So the polar bear is about standing up for ourselves and speaking our truth respectfully and compassionately, with no attachment to outcome. The King of Forces has no attachment to outcome because he is so rooted and powerful in the natural world, the King of Forces, right? That there is no attachment to outcome because he's completely plugged into the natural energy of unfoldment, right? He trusts, he's in complete alignment with all of this creation energy, and really represents within us this ability to hold this. So the polar bear is, again, stand up for yourself, speak your truth respectfully, no attachment to outcome, really be this King of Forces for other people as well. And approach situations with some innocence, right? And a little bit of purity, just like this King of Forces, no attachment to outcome, being innocent, being plugged into nature, being peaceful but powerful and balanced, and showing up and being completely present. That's another thing. The King of Forces is being present. You can have an attachment to outcome when you are actually present. You can't, because otherwise you're living in the future and we don't know what it is. So we have to be present in order to create the future that we actually want, instead of trying to know what it is when we haven't even created it yet. So the polar bear is important for this reason, to be present, no attachment to outcome, and be very strong in our truth, whatever that is. Now, the Eight of Scrolls reversed. Oh boy. Well, here we go. The unknown paths, right? It just sums it up so well. It's just like, we don't know. We really don't know where we're going, but we have to be, and there's a hesitation when it's reversed like this. We don't know which way to go. And maybe it's okay right this moment that we don't make a decision, right? Or that we trust our gut when we make this decision. There is hesitation. There's things we want to know so that we know that we're choosing the right path. We're not going to get this option. Okay. And that's where the hesitation is coming in. And it's time to look into the darkness, into our past, and look into our history in order to resolve issues. We can't just keep going forward without looking into our past and seeing where we've come from in order to impact the future. We have to do that first. And the thing is that the sun really is, when it's squared the moon, what is in it squared to the moon, it was, in fact, having us let go of all of our past. But if we don't even know what it is, how are we going to let go of it? Again, the Mercury retrograde. But this is, there's a certain amount of trust that we have to exercise when it comes to going into our past, into the darkness, right? This is the death card is right here. We are being asked to go into this space in order to let go of it fully. If we are not fully aware of the residue of our past influencing us in this present moment, how are we ever going to actually create the future that we want? And this seems easy enough. And, people talk about shadow work all day, but they always are, excuse me, they're projecting it out on other people as if they don't have any shadow work to do. And, we know better. We know that we all have a shadow. It's inevitable. So, and it's not to say that we should, step into our shadow and act from there exclusively. This is about looking into our own history and really looking into our past and seeing there what it is that we can learn. So we're kind of like, the path is unknown, but it's because we have to go back a little bit. Right? We have to go back a little bit. We have to trust what's coming, and trust in the unknowing. That's the other thing. We have to trust in the unknowing, but there are things we can do. We already know what's happened, so we can go back over it and make sure that we are square, right? Make sure that we are very aware of what's happened, and it's possible energetically to go back to these past situations and change the timeline based on our energetic reframing of our past situations. It's very possible. I've done it. And you can do it too. That's what happens when you come into the fourth dimension, is that you are outside time and space. You move through time and space. So you can actually go into the astral realm through a variety of ways, shamanic journeying, through your dream states and lucid dreaming. This is why meditation is so important, and prayer too. You can ask for assistance as well into these spaces and bridge the gap between our conscious mind and this area of trust. There's just so much trust of what is unfolding that is being asked of us right now. And with the moon in Pisces, it's actually making it really easy. And I'm not saying that this is being complacent. We actually have work to do in terms of where we've been. And I think that's really where we can have the most influences on where we've been. That way we can actually impact where we're going instead of somebody telling us where we're going so we can feel safe and secure, because we don't know. We just don't. And this is pretty clearly spelling it out. But we don't have to sit there and be like, oh God, what's going to happen? Because nothing can stop what's coming. We know that. It's all about how we're going to ride the ride, right? And we can do that by going back over old territory, just like with all the retrogrades. There's a lot of support for this right now. And go back into that space, because the Lover's card, like I said, there's going to be a strong desire to give up. There really is in the future. And it's important that we acknowledge that so that we can really go into the pathways that need our attention right now, so that when the time comes that we want to give up, that we don't. Right? That we don't. And that's coming really like down the line, right? Out of when Mercury's out of shadow, I'm sure. And then in October, when Saturn and Pluto both station direct, I think that's really where we're going to need the work that's happening right now. So especially with this eclipse season, So my friends, I think if I've rambled on long enough, thank you so much for watching and being part of this journey with me. I so appreciate each and every one of you. I hope that you're doing well. If you are interested in a reading, if you're interested in energetic support through Reiki or shamanic energy work, you can book through catalystenergies.net. That's in the description box below. You can find Catalyst Energies on Facebook and Telegram, also linked from the description box below. And if you want to support this channel monetarily, you can go to Subscribestar and subscribe to my channel for $3 a month. You have access to all of this information, and soon to come. I don't want to overcommit myself when I know that I have major issues in my personal life that are going to need my direct attention very soon. And so I want to say that there is more content coming for subscribers that is exclusive to you, but I have to be realistic about what I'm here to do and what's coming up for me personally. So, but in the meantime, if you just want to support the channel in and of itself, you can go to Subscribestar and do that. So thanks, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for being here. And I'll see you tomorrow for the Daily Medicine Transmission. Have a great one. Bye.